Hello. In this lesson you will learn how to process the incoming invoice from the vendor. The invoice usually received by the account payable department where they will trigger the invoice verification process. The invoice can be entered in the SAP system via transaction MIRO or by navigating the following SAP menu. Let me just go and use the command line to enter directly to this transaction. You can do that by typing in slash. I'm gonna use capital letter instead of small so you could see it. Capital N MIRO, and you press the enter key to continue. This is one way to do it. Let's go back. You can also start this transaction by going first to logistics, then go to materials management, then go to purchasing, then go to purchase order, then go to follow-on functions, click on that. The user will process the vendor's invoice by selecting transaction MIRO logistics invoice verification. So let's go ahead and double click on it to start the invoice verification process. The initial screen for transaction MIRO is displayed. The required enter fields for this transaction are the invoice date, posting date, the amount, and the tax amount if applicable. So let's begin by clicking on the invoice date and select a future date and posting date. Select it as 31st. We just put a reference number here. Let me go ahead now and select the purchase order related to this invoice, and I'm going to use order number starts with 45. I'm going to select the first one right here. This purchase order number or particular order number we're going to use to post an invoice against it. Let's go ahead now and press the enter key. Let's go back here to the amount field and enter the amount, and make sure that the amount on the invoice matches the amount on the purchase order. And we're going to enter here 1,000. Click on the calculate tax field and set the indicator if you want SAP to calculate the tax automatically for you. In the payment tab, SAP will calculate the date for payment automatically. So I'm going to change this to today's date. This is today's payment. Payment terms, I'm going to make it net 30. You have also something called payment block. Please know that you can stop or block payment from this area by selecting the reason for or from the payment block. Let's go ahead now and press the enter key. You can also view the purchase order details from here by double clicking on the purchase order number, where you have also the vendor's name and the PO detail. Let's go back and click the back icon. After entering all the required fields and you're ready to post this invoice, let's go ahead and check the mark and set that indicator to confirm. Go ahead now and post the invoice by clicking on the save icon. Notice the message at the bottom of the screen confirming that the invoice document number that ends with 8935/2013 is on hold. And I believe the reason why it has to do with the tax calculations, this area right here. Basically in the chart of accounts, the system administrator has to define the accounts to which a tax posting is to be made. So the tax code to be entered correctly, there should be some configuration to be made for taxes on sales or purchases. Let's go ahead now and click on the back icon to exit this transaction. That will conclude our Hello, in this lesson we are going to show you how to park an invoice. In another word, the invoice document will not be posted for whatever reason, but it will be parked and saved. There are situations where you have to park an invoice if it's not ready for posting. This will happen for several reasons, like the invoice needs modifications to make sure that the invoice is posted successfully, or for example the amount on the invoice does not match the amount on the PO. To park an invoice, use transaction MIR7, which can be initiated directly by entering in the command field /n MIR7 and press the enter key. The initial screen to park incoming invoice is displayed. Let's go back and let's bring us back to the main menu. Let's go ahead and navigate the SAP menu path to initiate this transaction to park an invoice. First, let's go to logistics, then go to materials management, then go to logistics invoice verification. Let's go and click on document entry, and that will take us to the list of transactions. We're going to use transaction MIR7 park invoice. So let's go ahead and double click on the transaction, and that will bring us to the park incoming invoice initial screen. Keep in mind that the transaction is similar to transaction MIRO for entering an invoice. The difference is actually is that when you are parking an invoice, the invoice document do not need to balance in the SAP system to 0. So begin by clicking on the invoice date, click on the search icon to open the calendar and enter a future date. Let's put 3rd June. Let's enter the amount as 800. Click in the purchase order field and enter the purchase order if it's known to you. I'm gonna type in or enter or select the first purchase order, then press the enter key. Notice that the amount on the purchase order is 600 and the amount on the invoice that I have received from the vendor is actually 800. So we have a difference of $200 that we owe to the vendor. Let's go ahead now and click on the payment tab. In the baseline date, let's go ahead and select search icon to open the calendar, and let's go ahead and click on today's date. SAP then will calculate automatically the date for payment. The payment terms is net 30. Go ahead and click the enter key. Notice that the due date now is July 2nd because we have net 30 payments. Please also notice that you can stop or block payment from this area by clicking on this icon. You could see the selection for the reason to block. You could select one of these options. Let's go ahead and now click on basic data tab to go back. After the user noticed that there is no match between the invoice and the PO amount, he decided to park this invoice. So let's go ahead and park this invoice by going to the invoice document menu. Click on it, and you have an option say save park document. Control S. So let's go ahead and save this invoice as parked invoice. Notice that the SAP system will display a message at the bottom screen confirming that this invoice been parked and gave us a document number for that to confirm. From here I can also go back and see the document that's been just parked. Let's go ahead and click on the show work list. Go to parked documents, click, and go to the last one. Let's go ahead and hide the PO structure. If for any reason the user decides to unpark the invoice that's been just parked, Hello. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to release a blocked invoice. So after the invoice has been blocked for some time and for some reason the block does not apply anymore, the invoice then must be released first, and we can trigger that by canceling the blocking that we set on this invoice at the time when the invoice was entered for posting. So let's begin first by going to logistics, then go to materials management, then go to logistics invoice verification, then click on or select further processing. Let's go and click on this option, then go ahead and select transaction MRBR, release blocked invoices. Let's go ahead and double click on this transaction. The release blocked invoices screen is displayed. You have a set of selections are displayed. We're going to keep the company code as 1000 and I'm going to put the year as 2011 to limit my selection. We have the invoice document, so if you know the number of the invoice you could enter it here. If you have the vendor name, posting date, due date, and other options as well. So if you know the invoice document, you could enter it here and select release automatically and go ahead and click on execute. It will release the invoice that's been blocked automatically. If you don't want to do that and see a list of invoices that's been blocked in the year of 2011 and start releasing each and every one by viewing the list, that will be probably more wise than just go ahead and releasing the invoice automatically. So before I go ahead and click on execute, we have also a blocking procedure. We have blocked due to a variance. The variance could be the amount on the PO is not the same as on the invoice, the vendor's invoice. We have also manual payment block, and we have stochastically blocked. That means the stochastic or random block allows the user to inspect invoices at random or above a limited value defined in the configuration. So if the user configures the limited amount for certain department or plan to be, let's say, $5,000, then each invoice entered over 5,000, if I select that option, would have a high chance of being blocked. So automatically the invoice will be blocked if it's above $5,000 because I have already chosen this option, and that's done in the configuration. Let me go ahead now and click on execute. We just put block due to variances. Go ahead and click on execute. I have here a list of invoices that's been blocked by the user. You can also from here, if you notice, you can display the purchase order. Go ahead and click on it. Could view the PO. You can also display and view the invoice document as well. If you notice, you can only view but cannot edit or change any of the fields. So let's go ahead and highlight the invoice or invoices where the block is still in place but no longer valid. So if this is the invoice to be released, go and highlight it and go and click on save. Notice the message at the status bar saying that blocking reasons deleted. So that means this invoice is being released, no longer is blocked. Let's go now and click on the back icon to leave the screen. You have just learned how to release a blocked invoice. Let's go ahead now and review the quiz questions